The Cost Curve, starring Brandon
Hiya,
Neef,
Bobby.
Robbie
You
Poole,
wanna go for a ride?
Jonathan Louisiana, and Stuart
Jump in.
Bethel.
I'm a Barbie girl in the Barbie world, life in plastic.
Alright, we begin with the law of diminishing returns, which states that as workers increase, the number of workers you have working for your firm, at the beginning, more workers allow you to produce more, so your firm becomes more and more efficient. But after a point, the workers start distracting each other, hanging out with their girlfriends, talking to each other on cell phones, hanging out in the bathroom, that kind of stuff. And they start becoming less productive after a certain point. Now, what that has to do with cost is that if you take this and you kind of flip it and reflect it and all kind of crap, you come up with this. Notice that our total output has switched from here to here, and our variable input has gone from here to here, and we just multiply it by a dollar value to make it our cost. So as you can see, as you add more workers and you produce more, in the beginning, your cost doesn't increase as quickly. But right about here, from this point forward, your costs begin increasing more rapidly as your output increases. By the way, this becomes the total variable cost. It's simply the variable cost of adding more workers. It's variable. To begin with, we'll talk about the aggregate cost of owning a firm. First of all, we'll begin with our total fixed cost, which, if you look at our wonderful chart here, as output increases, it remains the same. That's because it's fixed. This would be stuff like utilities, like phones, water,
Electricity.
As Robbie Poole said, plumbing. Can't forget that. The variable cost, total variable cost, if you look at this carefully, which we'll get to this later, it increases at different rates. This has to do with the law of diminishing returns. You'll notice, of course, it increases the whole time, but it doesn't increase as quickly at different times. If we look at our graph here, here's the total fixed cost, which always remains the same, and here is the total variable cost, which, as you can see, it increases kind of sluggishly, and then it starts rapidly increasing. Now, we have our total cost, which all it is combining these two, adding them together. If you'll notice, its whole curve is the same as the total variable cost curve. It's just that there's a difference between it that is the same as the difference between 0 and the total fixed cost, which in this case is $400. This entire total cost curve is raised $400 above the total variable cost curve. And that's all there is to it.
Hey everyone, I'm Robbie. I'm going to talk to you about the unit costs, which are merely the averages of the aggregate costs. So basically, you have your three unit costs: your average fixed cost, average variable cost, and your average total cost. These are the formulas how you find the value for each of these. Once you know your aggregate cost, you can find these unit costs by this formula or by these formulas. To find the average fixed cost, all you do is take the total fixed cost and divide it by the quantity. All right, and when you're trying to find your average variable cost, you take the total variable cost and divide it by the quantity. Same goes for average total cost. You take the total cost and divide it by the quantity.
Notice how you can also, to get average total cost, you can also just add up the average fixed cost and the average variable cost.
Correct, Jonathan Luciano. You can also find ATC equals AFC plus AVC. Simple as that.
Jonathan.
What?
Oh, hello. My name is Jonathan Luciano, and I'm going to teach the marginal cost curve. Marginal cost is basically the average total cost, the change in total cost, my bad, divided by the change in quantity.
Wait, Jonathan. So you mean this is not just a random triangle?
No, Robbie, it's not just a random triangle. It
Okay.
actually means something.
Why isn't it a pentagon?
It has 3 sides, Brandon. Nonetheless, let's continue on with the our class. Marginal cost actually measures the a price of how much an extra unit would cost. For example, it would cost this much to make 1 extra more product or 2 extra products. That's what it measures. So, for example, if you notice on the graph, it first starts off reasonably well, $6, as you would say. Then make a dip downwards and then increase. It increases exponentially because of the average variable cost. Since the average fixed cost is always the same price, it really depends on the average variable cost because workers just don't cost the same for every worker you add on. Get what I'm trying to say? It would always cost more. And since we're talking about total cost here, the number would always rise up. So, if you want to see it on a graph, on a table, it looks something like this. 6, 5, 4, then it'll take that dip, the lowest point, which would be 3, and then rise all the way back up to $11, and so on. So this is your marginal cost curve.